to the latest to the Middle East, the war in Israel. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu holding a phone call just yesterday with President Joe Biden. The Times of Israel reporting that Netanyahu told Biden that he sent a negotiation team to meet with Hamas about a ceasefire deal. He also told Biden that Israel is, quote, committed to ending the war only after achieving all of its goals, end quote. Meanwhile, according to a government official, Israel also dispatched an Israeli delegation to continue those hostage release talks that hopefully secure the release of 120 Israeli captives in Gaza, including still 5 Americans today. Pleased to bring in right now our expert panel, former Trump administration U.S. Ambassador and 68th Governor of Virginia, Ambassador James Gilmore. Pleasure to have you, sir. And the Executive Director of the American Conservative, Curt Mills. Biden is having trouble speaking with any authority, referred to himself as a black woman in this Philadelphia radio station interview. And now he's having calls with world leaders. Clearly, there was already deteriorated relations. I'm putting it nicely, as you know, Ambassador. Is this just, he's going through the motions here, Netanyahu, to call Joe Biden? What significance, if any, do you take from this call?
Listen, Bianca, there's just a couple of fundamentals here. The fundamental question is does Israel have the right to exist or not? Because that's really what the Hamas people are trying to do, is to eliminate Israel altogether. And second of all, I strongly disapprove of this so-called peace plan that President Biden put forward. I don't think it works. I think it's ridiculous. I think it undermines Israel. Israel's committed to their own safety after, by the way, they were invaded and 1,200 Israelis were murdered, which people just seem to forget. And I think that this peace plan, this so-called peace plan, is unworkable. It talks about how there's going to be a 6-week ceasefire. You're negotiating with Hamas, not destroying Hamas. The second stage is something even more ridiculous. The trade-off is going to be between hostages and hundreds of Palestinians. And it's just the Gaza people are saying that the Israelis can't come into Gaza. They have to withdraw. There has to be rebuilding, which should not be with American
fundamentals.
money.
Yeah.
So I just disapprove of the plan.
Yeah, and it just chalk it up to another failure on his foreign policy record again. And, the pier was a disaster, pandering to voters a disaster. Curt, your take on all those very important threads that Ambassador Gilmore just laid out. Apparently, too, our adversaries see all this. Iran sort of probably chuckling that Joe Biden is getting so many people behind him, still knowing his cognitive issues are a real national security concern.
Yeah, I think it's a sort of difficult tango. We don't actually know who's going to be running these countries in 5 to 7 months' time, right? It's not clear if Biden is staying in office. It's not clear if he's going to be on top of the ticket. I tend to think he will be. And it's not clear that Netanyahu will himself be in charge of Israel. So this is world stakes mixed with the reality of domestic politics. And you mentioned Iran. That's also true. The Iranians will have their second round of the presidential election this weekend, and you either have a pretty hardline conservative in there, regime conservative, or a reformist. There's just a lot up in the air here. So I would tend to fade the permanence of any of these deals at the moment. It really just appears that we are at the mercy of the political cycle here.
And such an inflection point for the world, which is incredible, too. I just want to play a little bit of Russia's President Vladimir Putin said he'd negotiate an end to the war in Ukraine if Trump is at the White House. Let's play this clip.
Well, the fact that Mr. Trump, as a presidential candidate, says that he's ready and wants to stop the war in Ukraine, we take that very seriously. Well, I haven't seen his ideas on how exactly he's going to do that, and that is the key question. But I have no doubt that he says that sincerely, and we support that.
Okay, so, sometimes we have these conversations and we look, Ambassador, and say, well, they want Joe Biden because he's a puppet, because they know that they can push him around unlike Donald Trump. But if there's a real opportunity to end civilian deaths, bring back Israeli and American hostages, and people are more willing to work with Donald Trump, even North Korea walking into the DMZ here, I think people would be like raising their hand saying, let's sign up, even if Joe Biden wants to clutch onto power at all costs. Your take on Putin's words there?
Well, first of all, we don't. President Trump was not a weak man when he was president. When I was helping to conduct that diplomacy in Europe, we were projecting strength, not weakness. Second of all, President Putin is very clear. He can't win on the battlefield. Russia is going to lose this war. And right now he's trying to bail out by getting a negotiated settlement, which will allow him to keep his conquest. That's what he's trying to do. You know, he basically said, sure, we'll settle the thing if Ukraine withdraws from all of the territories that they own and surrenders at the negotiating table. Ukraine's not going to do that, and I don't think the United States ought to force them to do it.
Final 20 seconds, Curt. Can you put a final thought on what Ambassador Gilmore just said here? How do we get out of these never-ending wars then?
Well, you first need administrations that are committed to actually ending the wars. So, you know, I think we should be open to any administration that wants a ceasefire in either Israel or Ukraine. I think Putin is, again, playing jujitsu there and waiting to see the result of the election.
Appreciate you both. Got to leave it there. Very great to have you in. I know we'll be talking soon in the coming weeks and months as you talk about all the change that is happening on the world stage. And no one seems to know exactly who will be in what position here, but it is critical to the peace and security of so many nations. Ambassador Gilmore, Curt Mills, thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you, Bianca.
Pleasure. Some breaking news coming into us right now. According to Bloomberg, President Biden, as we showed you, was just departing for Wisconsin, and he was asked by a reporter if he can still beat Trump. The answer, one word, can't mess that up, could he? It was yes. We'll continue to get more reaction on what some say is the most important next few days for Joe Biden as he goes on the campaign trail, and also a critical interview with George Stephanopoulos at ABC. We're going to take a very quick break. When we come back, we're going to have a really interesting interview. Dennis Quaid calling it an honor to play Ronald Reagan in that new film that's dropping soon. It's right here on Newsline next.